you, Madam President. France requested this emergency meeting in response to the major escalation currently underway and the significant expansion of Israeli military operations in Lebanon, despite the ceasefire that entered into force on the 17th of April under the auspices of the United States. I thank you for organizing this meeting so promptly, and I thank Assistant Secretary General Martha Pobee for her briefing. We also welcome the participation of the representatives of Lebanon and Israel in the meeting. Madam President, let us recall from the outset that it is Hezbollah, supported by Iran, that bears responsibility for the outbreak of hostilities, having dragged Lebanon and the Lebanese people into a war that is not theirs. We condemned this unequivocally, just as we condemn today Hezbollah's continued attacks against Israeli territory. We recognize Israel's right to defend itself against Hezbollah's attacks. Nevertheless, nothing can justify the continuation and scale of its military operations in Lebanon, the thousands of civilian deaths and injuries, and the forced displacement of populations, or its ever deeper occupation of Lebanese territory. This constitutes a major strategic mistake on Israel's part. Furthermore, these operations are contrary to the commitments Israel undertook on the 17th of April and to the resolutions of this Council. It is urgent that the guns fall silent. This headlong rush took on a symbolic dimension yesterday by planting its flag on the Beaufort fortress, which served as a base during its occupation of southern Lebanon until 2000. Israel is returning now to a period that many believed was behind us. History is instructive. The same causes are highly likely to produce the same effects. Far from bringing security to Israel and its citizens, a new occupation risks only fueling instability. Because every village bombed and destroyed, every civilian killed, strengthens Hezbollah and weakens the Lebanese executive, whose political determination to consolidate Lebanon's sovereignty we commend. Israel has a major role to play in helping the Lebanese authorities realize that political objective. Israel's lasting security lies neither in war nor in occupation. Much rather, it lies in peace with its neighbors and in regional stability. Madam President, the 17th of April ceasefire is fragile. But it remains the only path towards a lasting agreement. This is why France fully supports the direct discussions launched between Lebanon and Israel under the United States auspices. These discussions, which are due to continue on the 2nd and 3rd of June, represent a decisive opportunity. The time has come to translate them into concrete results, and we call on all stakeholders, including the US as host, to do everything possible to ensure their success. An important announcement has just been made. It's important that these talks be realized, and we hope that the talks between Israel and Lebanon will lead to a just and lasting political solution, including the disarmament of Hezbollah and the restoration of the full sovereignty of the Lebanese state, the withdrawal of Israeli forces from Lebanese territory, and guarantees of full respect for Lebanon's territorial integrity. And we also hope that they will chart an irreversible path toward peace and security for both countries. Until the guns have fallen silent, one absolute imperative remains. Civilians, whether Lebanese or Israeli, as well as journalists and emergency personnel, must under no circumstances be targeted. Respect for international humanitarian law is required at all times in order to protect civilian populations and infrastructure and to guarantee access to those in need of assistance. Madam President, France's position is clear and consistent, and it has 4 points. Firstly, full support for the Lebanese people, authorities, and armed forces. The Lebanese people, who are suffering the consequences of a war they did not choose, more than ever before, need assistance and protection. France is working towards this goal through the deployment of 17 million euros in humanitarian assistance to support the Lebanese authorities in managing a humanitarian crisis unprecedented in both scale and duration. The Lebanese armed forces, for their part, have the difficult mission of continuing under difficult conditions the disarmament of Hezbollah and the extension of state authority. We are supporting them specifically through the delivery of 39 armored vehicles. France will continue to provide its full support to the Lebanese authorities and will organise in Paris, as soon as circumstances permit, the international conference in support of the Lebanese armed forces. Secondly, the requirement that Hezbollah immediately cease its attacks and hand over its weapons to the Lebanese state, in accordance with the courageous decision taken by the government on the 2nd of March. Iran, for its part, must end its support for Hezbollah and cease fueling instability in the region. Thirdly, opposition to any lasting Israeli occupation of Lebanon. Lebanon's sovereignty and territorial integrity are not negotiable. We do not accept the occupation of positions on Lebanese soil or the establishment of a buffer zone. We do not accept evacuation orders, restrictions preventing displaced persons from returning to their homes, or acts of destruction. This includes archaeological sites, notably districts of the city of Tyre, which is listed as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. No security consideration can justify a permanent infringement upon the sovereignty of a state. And fourthly, respect for UNIFIL and its personnel. France reaffirms its full support for the mandate of the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, UNIFIL, which must be able to carry out its mandate fully and without obstruction until it expires, as provided for by Resolution 2790. France recalls that the protection of peacekeepers is an obligation under international law, and we salute the professionalism and dedication of UNIFIL personnel and of all troop-contributing countries, and recall that 2 of its soldiers recently lost their lives in the fulfilment of this mission. Madam President, the path to a diplomatic solution is well known. The full implementation of Resolution 1701 and respect for the ceasefire by all parties. France is working tirelessly towards this goal at every level, together with the Lebanese and Israeli authorities and all our partners. I thank you.
The United Kingdom joined in calling this meeting to condemn the severe escalation of Israeli military action in Lebanon over recent days. This reckless and disproportionate escalation of Israeli military action has exacerbated an already devastating environment for Lebanese civilians and places the government of Lebanon under further strain. Civilians have been killed and over 1 million displaced, civilian homes and infrastructure destroyed, and the space for diplomacy eroded. Further escalation on this scale is simply not proportionate and cannot set the conditions for lasting peace. We reiterate that Hezbollah, at the instigation of Iran, have dragged Lebanon into a war that its government and people do not want. We strongly condemn Lebanese Hezbollah's ongoing attacks against Israel. We also condemn recent comments by Hezbollah's leadership that seek to destabilise the democratically elected government of Lebanon within their own country. Hezbollah does not speak or act for the people of Lebanon. We are clear that Hezbollah must end attacks on Israel and disarm. President, UNICEF reported that 15 children were killed and 62 injured in Lebanon last week as a result of the conflict. That's 11 children killed or injured every 24 hours. Healthcare workers are also facing death and injury as they carry out their duties. The escalation must end. We call upon all parties to uphold their obligations under international law. Israel's legitimate concerns about the security of their northern communities will not be solved by military escalation. The talks convened by the US between the governments of Israel and Lebanon are the only viable path towards a lasting political settlement and the disarmament of Hezbollah. We warmly welcome these talks, and yet progress is being undermined by both Hezbollah and Israel. All parties must implement a genuine and lasting cessation of hostilities to allow space for real diplomatic progress. We support the efforts of the Lebanese government to extend its authority throughout the country in line with Security Council Resolution 1701, including through the strengthening of Lebanese state institutions and security forces, and the disarmament of Hezbollah. We call for swift implementation. Escalation in Lebanon and across the Blue Line risk further destabilising Lebanon and undermining critical negotiations to achieve peace across the region. The United Kingdom will continue to support diplomatic efforts that deliver lasting peace and security for both Lebanon and Israel. I thank you.
We supported the call for this meeting, as the situation in Lebanon is growing increasingly critical. Over the past 3 months, we have witnessed developments that raise serious concerns about a renewed Israeli occupation of Lebanon. The recent military escalation and expansion of ground operations in southern Lebanon beyond the Litani River, reaching as far as Tyre and Nabatieh, add to this concern. This represents Israel's deepest military push into Lebanon in 26 years and must stop. While Israel has the right to self-defense, this must be exercised in accordance with international law. We call for full respect for Lebanon's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity. This includes withdrawing Israeli forces from South Lebanon. We also reiterate our strong condemnation of Hezbollah's continued attacks against Israel and underline that these attacks must stop immediately. All parties must respect the ceasefire. We continue to support the direct talks between Israel and Lebanon and hope that they can pave the way for lasting peace. We support the re-establishment of a robust monitoring mechanism along the lines of what existed during the ceasefire in 2024 to ensure compliance with the current ceasefire agreement and build trust between the parties. Madam President, Denmark is deeply concerned about the humanitarian and civilian consequences of Israel's military operations in Lebanon. The escalating conflict has created a humanitarian crisis in Lebanon and displaced more than 1 million people, about 20% of the entire Lebanese population. Let me reiterate well-known calls. Safe, secure, and sustained humanitarian access to civilians must be ensured in accordance with the international humanitarian law. Denmark condemns all attacks directed against civilians and civilian infrastructure, including first responders and healthcare personnel. Israel must cease all demolitions of civilian infrastructure. We are also deeply concerned by military operations in and around Lebanon's cultural heritage sites. Cultural property must be protected and must not be used for military purposes. International law must be fully respected at all times. Madam President, Hezbollah has, once again, dragged Lebanon into an unwanted war. Hezbollah must disarm in full accordance with Resolution 1701 and cease all attacks on Israel. We commend the Lebanese government for these steps it has taken to restore the state's monopoly over arms and to expand the authority of the Lebanese armed forces. The current military escalation risks undermining these positive steps. Focus should now be on strengthening the Lebanese armed government and the Lebanese armed forces to enable them to fulfill the disarmament mandate rather than extending the conflict. We also stress the importance of a continued strong and effective UN presence in Lebanon in support of Resolution 1701. As UNIFIL's mandate approaches its end, we must ensure that there is no vacuum in the international community's engagement. We welcome the Secretary General's report on this question and look forward to its thorough discussion. Madam President, in closing, sovereignty and territorial integrity are not just theoretical principles. They are at the very foundation of the international order we have fought to uphold within this chamber for the last 80 years. What we are witnessing in Lebanon today is what happens when those principles erode. The potential ripple effects for Lebanon, the region, and the credibility of this Council are way too clear. It is our collective responsibility to continue to protect them. I thank you.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to Mirror Now.